I remember reading the sentence in my biology class textbook that before the Big Bang, all matter was compacted into a tiny space smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. I loved that sentence in a way, and it so struck me because it felt so direct that I could just stare at that period at the end of that sentence. And it sort of like, in a way of like explaining or writing, it sort of like drew me right there. But objectively, like looking at that now, I see that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And it's far more ridiculous than any sort of religious or mythological explanation of the creation of earth or heaven. Because we so could not think of anything but the materialist paradigm, that instead of saying that something came from nothing, we had to say that it was infinitely small, almost atomic. So atoms are the very same idea. And from a scientific standpoint or whatever, it's totally fine to consider. It's just that it's where it crosses our lives into the relationships and emotions and all these other things that we say are separate from what we are and separate from science, and we try to separate this like material and logical aspects of our lives and the emotional, creative aspects of our lives. I was talking to my dad last night, and he said that it struck him how he was taught these two opposite things, that matter can neither be created or destroyed. And yet he was raised in a religious household and was taught that God created everything. Those two things, which seem to comprise these two different camps of beliefs about what we are, where we came from, actually aren't conflicting at all. It's how you define God. If God is a projection of the human psyche or the human form outside of all of this, and separate from us and unreachable, then that he created matter. He never did. Matter was never created. It's being created, right? Awareness is creating it. It never actually becomes. We can only interact with it through awareness, through the senses. There's no, we can think of the tree on the other side of the island or the tree on the other side of the water. But outside of seeing it, even this video, even the site is a representation of it. So a lot of our questions about what we are based on this assumption, just like the assumption that matter can't be created or destroyed, and so it had to be packed into an infinitely small thing, rather than saying something came out of nothing. Questions like, do we have free will, come out of the assumption that we are separate things and that we can possess things. So the entire idea of possession comes from believing that we're a material thing and that we can possess material things. If you always go back to the present moment, which is the simplest pointer to sort of see through how fantastical and crazy all these things seem to be, but really like directly, can you actually own anything? Or are you ever just experiencing it in the present moment? So the question, do we have free will? Things like freedom, things like love, we actually conceptualize the same way we conceptualize our possessions. So right now my car is a very, very ephemeral thing. It's an idea, it's a thought in my head. It's not directly experienced whatsoever. And even when it is, it's still sort of like the the blind men describing an elephant touching different parts of an elephant analogy, and how some of them say all these crazily different things about the elephant. All there is now, and is the experience, and is what seems to be this infinitesimally, I didn't say that right, small, just like the period at the end of the sentence, part of experience, and yet is completely whole. It's not a part. So we can conceptualize physical things, and we conceptualize being a part. So, can we have love? Can we have freedom? Can we have will? So, no, we are. It's not just having. Having is keeping something at a distance. Being is all there really is. Anyway, there's only now. Past is a thought, future is a thought. There's only now. So aligning that, going back to that as the understanding, going back to knowing nothing, just being completely open to the present as the understanding, rather than believing that we are humans, separate bodies, body minds, changes everything, and changes everything in the way that we interact with the world. So not to say that this necessarily will happen, but if it does happen, if you ever get to the point where you're like, oh crap, I built my house upon the sand, this is a horrible loss, realize that there is no house, there is no sand. That's where the metaphor ends. That's still the materialist paradigm. And that's still overlooking that now is complete freedom, is complete clearing, pureness, clarity. And that it's the only pivot point where we can drop thoughts that feel bad and focus towards what we want, or look to what we really are. And that's true clearing and true purification. And also it's got your back. And without effort of trying to make things, trying to secure things, which was building the house upon the sand, will align everything that needs to be aligned, because, and only because, it already is. So sometimes we feel like ignorance is bliss, and we're like, I wish I hadn't heard this stuff, I wish I hadn't studied this stuff, and that yet again is believing it to be knowledge. This isn't knowledge. This isn't a new understanding of what we are. This is only seeing the materialist understanding of what we are to be false. And immediately recognizing the bliss, the wonder, and the insights that may come of recognizing what we really are. There's nothing lost, and there's nothing wasted. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, and nothing can be wasted. You have wasted nothing. All of those misunderstandings were totally for naught. And yet, we're not wasted. This is a material, mundane example, but I recognize this pattern in myself when I had put up most of the curtains in my house and put them up how I assumed they were supposed to go up, which was right over the molding above the window. And then I actually researched it and looked at like what the length of curtains should be and how they should be hung, and found that the more modern way to do things is to hang them more above the window and just under the ceiling, and then you have curtains that lengthen your room, and it looks really elegant. So I tried this and I liked it. And then I was like, wow, I've just like messed up, bought the wrong length of curtains for most of the house. And I wish I'd never read that. And that was not a thought that felt good. No, I want to, going forward in my life, I want to know. I want to know the way I prefer. And so, again, nothing is lost, nothing is wasted. And we may not go, there's no need to go there. That's all I'm saying. That house was never built upon any sand. There's no rock to build it on. It's completely groundless, and that is complete security, freedom, love, all of those things. Don't need securing, don't need owning, don't need possession, because they cannot be created or destroyed or separate from you.